Okay, we're good. Wow, what an experience. Good afternoon, Grace. How are you? Or Renee?
Hi. Hi, Carl.
Yes. We had a little difficulty trying to get in, but we are in. I had to get some technical support, but we are glad that we are here. Welcome, everybody, wherever you may be watching us from. Tonight, I am very excited to have a friend with us tonight. She is just an amazing woman, I tell you. Since many years ago that I met her, I cannot stop bragging about her and the kind of work that she does. Today, you're going to meet her and you're going to hear for yourself the kind of knowledge that she possesses, not only the knowledge, but if you see her at work and the stuff that she's doing on the ground, that's what we're talking about, is being able to just you know be out there for the people and just be yourself and contributing whatever way you can. But we are welcome you again to Stand Up Fight Back, where we discuss strategy and analysis for the progressive movement. We hear every Sunday. We try to be here at 7 o'clock, but today we did have some technical difficulties, and we're able to get some support. And just now, actually, we were able to go live with you and be able to be here. We're very excited to be here because this is a time where we come to you and we discuss the issues that you really care about. And again, uh, Renee Gracie Rodriguez. Wow. I mean, there's so much things that I can say about her to get us started to introduce her, but I'm gonna let her do that herself. But before that, before we get into the nitty gritty, I can tell you something. She has a love for motorcycles, particular Harley Davidson. My goodness. And I was glancing through some of your pictures and I seen you out there with your Harley. And I said, look out, you know what I mean? Is riding, I can only feel the freedom that people feel when they're riding their bikes, right? Tell us a little bit about that. How did you get involved with Harley Davidsons?
Well, thank you, Carlos. Thank you for the introduction. And it's an honor to be here, a privilege, and to have my words recorded for posterity. Let's hopefully I say something meaningful for somebody. But, I was in college and I had to go to college on my own. It was something I didn't have family that was financing that for me. And I had a work study job and I really needed transportation to get across the campus that I was at. And finally came up with $400, and the cheapest thing I could find was a gentleman that was selling a motorcycle. I had no clue how to ride a motorcycle. I'd never ridden one. I was 17 years old. And the guy said, it's easy. One down. No, what was it? He says, one down, four, three up. What the heck does that mean? And he took me out to a park where the grass was kind of soft, and he put me on the bike and he said, squeeze with your left hand. One down. That's first gear. Hold it in again, flip up. That's second. Then go to third and go to fourth. And that's how you ride. And it's like, okay. So with a little practice, it became a passion of mine from the age of 17. And I've had motorcycles ever since then.
Wow. I mean, it's so beautiful uh, to see that, that you're out there and not only, you're in the community, but you just like anybody else, it's like we all come from different backgrounds. We like different things, that's one thing that I really appreciate about all the friendships that I have been able to develop, just
Mm-hmm.
to see their background and to see the stuff that they like to do, and this is what that makes diversity so important, in all the work that we do, because we all come from different backgrounds, we all like different things, we all like different music, different foods, different colors, right? And
Yeah.
trying to force people into being something they're not, it doesn't make sense.
No.
That's why you cannot force religion in anybody. You cannot force politics into anybody. Come as you are. Be yourself. If you like disco music, it's okay. If you like rock and roll, it's okay, right? If you like to ride bikes or you like to roller skate, it's okay.
Yeah.
We all trying to find ourselves, a good time and stuff. And I'm glad that, you know, as I say, when I saw those pictures of you and your Harley, it looks nice. It looks nice. You know, I'm like, I need to do that.
Well, we're ready to take you for a ride, Carlos. Anytime you're ready.
There you go. But tell us a little bit more about yourself. Besides someone that loves to ride Harleys, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, one of the things I'll tell you, I grew up in the Inland Empire. Parents, I was adopted when I was 14 months old. And during that time, I have plenty of childhood stories to tell you, but there was a bit of trauma that went on, quite a bit of trauma that I was having to deal with. And so it really put me in a precarious position. I had escaped to go to college. And within the first semester, I had a complete nervous breakdown. Couldn't leave my dorm room for a month. I mean, actually like 3 months, I couldn't leave. Just couldn't get out. I was just so depressed. And I finally jumped on the motorcycle and I just went until I couldn't stop anymore. And that became one decision after another that led to something worse, Eventually, I found myself homeless, living in People's Park. And it was not a good situation. I was doing quite a bit of drugs and alcohol. And I got to a place where I finally said, wow, everything I thought I knew and I thought I could do better turned out to be wrong. It's like, wow, this is my best thinking got me into a really horrible, horrible situation. And, but I got lucky. I got arrested and that arrest led to me, and why I'm so passionate about the Housing First model today is it led me to a judge who arranged a voucher for 60 days in a hotel room, and to have the dignity of a door that locks and not being given a bunch of crappy BS rules about, well, once you're in this facility, you can't do drugs, you can't bring your pet, you can't have your partner here, you can't have visitors. All of these things that gives people a sense of dignity of having privacy was not taken away from me. It was given to me freely. And trust me, I was 20 years old by the time I got that room. And it wasn't until I was 26 years old that I actually got sober. So there was a lot of time that had gone on where I was still drinking and drugging and using and just a mess, but I was working through it. I was getting help. I was attending 12-step meetings. I was doing, a lot of different things, but I'm going to tell you right now, unpacking the trauma that I had to unpack, which include sexual molestation, long-term molestation from the age of 9 till I was 14, not my parents, but it was someone in the neighborhood, and that was a babysitter, and that went on daily, and then not to be believed and to be threatened as an adoptee that I would be returned to the adoption center if I caused too many problems. It was very, very traumatic. I had a lot of issues. And, our pain is a source of, can be a gold mine, because that pain has brought me to where I am today. And a lot of who I am today has to do with the grace, mercy, and compassion that I learned from those experiences. So that's kind of a little bit of my background. I want you to know that this year in May, I'll celebrate 29 years of sobriety. Thank God. I have a law practice where I work with a couple of other attorneys, and we do real estate litigation. We also do, I am a certified state bar bankruptcy specialist. So when we talk about the law of starting over, which is what bankruptcy is all about, I am the queen of starting over. I've had to do it several times in my life because things just have not worked out well for me. So just thought I'd let you know that little background. I always tell clients that they come to my office and say, I'm so embarrassed I'm filing bankruptcy. I said, you're embarrassed. I'm the lawyer. And you know what? I've had to do bankruptcy a couple of times. So, I mean, the stupidest things you could do with money, I've done them, and I'm here to help you. And that brings me to my other point, is that nobody can help another human being as much as somebody who's gone through the experience and lived through it and recovered from it. So it's going to take other alcoholics and addicts to help other alcoholics and addicts. It's going to take other formerly unhoused people like myself to be able to understand and connect with unhoused people and mentor them and bring them through the process and overcome the barriers to trust. But I will tell you, it starts with giving them housing first. You have to give us a safe space to operate in. Without that, nothing, no services you provide out on the street are ever going to be worthwhile. You have to have that safe space. And we're working on it together.
Yes. And we are going to be talking more about housing throughout this broadcast. But thank you again, Gracie, for sharing some of your personal life with us. You know, it's commendable that you have the courage to do that, because a lot of people, they carry stories. Everybody has a story, and a lot of people just like to put a front. But the fact of the matter is that I met you actually in a courthouse. That's where I met you back
Yes.
during the days of the financial crisis. And one of the things that really impressed me is, as I sat down in the back to hear one of the cases, is your passion that you had when you were talking to the judge. You know what you were talking about. You know what it meant for a family to be evicted. And if you didn't advocate for them with that kind of passion that I heard, most likely the judge would have made an easy decision and just threw the family out to the streets. But the fact is that people like you that have been homeless, that have had not an easy life, that have made a lot of mistakes, you were given an opportunity and you rose up to the occasion, not in one day. It didn't take a week, it didn't take a month, it took a long time, but you arrived. You took it, you saw your life, and you knew that you didn't want that for yourself. And you were telling me a little bit about the other day. Actually, I didn't even know that you were homeless.
Wow.
The other day that you came to visit over at the office at AIDS Healthcare Foundation, that I learned a lot about you that I didn't know. All this time I said, like, she's a super lawyer, she's out there, but you have made a lot of mistakes, and people will make mistakes out there.
Absolutely. And the thing is this, is that, you hear I'm often amazed by these lawyers that go on television and they say, we've won 98% of their cases, right? And I think to myself, that's because they never just tried to take on any of the hard cases. I'm 50-50 because I take on the hard cases, the ones that are the borderline, because those are where the families need the help. We have all these issues in real estate right now where people used a family member or friend to help them qualify for a loan to buy their homes. And now that the value's gone up, these people that had agreed to help the families are now saying, well, half the house is mine. And they're starting evictions against these people because they're trying to take advantage of the real estate market that's gone up insanely high. And they don't have money to litigate. They don't have money to litigate. It's absolutely unfair to sit there. You loaned your credit. You didn't live there. You didn't make any mortgage payments. You didn't help the family at all. And then you want to come back and claim half the equity and force the sale of their home so you can recover that equity. It's just, these are some of the crazy circumstances that I run into and that I have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we know that greed is very real, and usually greed comes on when there's opportunities, right?
Yes.
And we see that left and right. But look, Renee, our city's hurting right now.
Yep.
And we know that. We don't have to go far to see pain and suffering. We see that almost in every corner, every street that we go through. And we've gone from one issue to the other, but definitely housing is on top of the list. And you did mention the fact that you were unhoused, and that the fact that you had to struggle through your dependency on addictions and stuff. That's one of the big things that people talk about today when they think unhoused, homeless. There's different reasons why people are in pain, why people end up using or abusing drugs or alcohol. You know, uh, Tell us a little bit more about that experience, and really you as someone that uses alcohol or drugs, at least during that time. You know, there's always you always I me. I talk to a lot of people that have these issues, and I know that this is not what they want for their lives.
Yes.
They don't
Yeah.
want that.
Well, let me explain it this way, Carlos, is that what people don't realize is that we're all very different people. Some people can go through a very traumatic experience and they process it. They have the tools, emotional resilience, and maturity to be able to process that and let it go. And it affects them and it has an impact on them, but not to the effect that it may affect somebody else. I want you to know I do believe there is a genetic component to addiction. And you don't just become an addict. I mean, there's people I've met that have gone through horrible things and they've become heavy drinkers, but after a while they realize, oh, this isn't the way to go, and they quit. I've met many people who say, I don't understand how come people just can't quit like I did. I mean, I was drinking real heavy and all of a sudden I was fine. You know, I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. People just need to make up their mind. But see, that's not the real alcoholic or the real drug addict that's out there. Those of us who are genetically inclined to this addiction, is there is a part of our brain, and they've proven this scientifically, that lights up literally on fire in ways our pleasure centers perk up in ways that are just not common among the regular population. So while some people never seem to become addicts, there's someone like me, I become an addict. Anything that feels good, tastes good, looks good, I want it, and I want my share, I want your share, and everybody else's share. At least that's how I was when I was much younger. And fueling some of that desire for that pleasure is all the unpleasantness I went through. Because I do want to make it known, there's a lot of people that have gone through trauma and abuse, and they don't become the kind of person that I had become, because I had both trauma and abuse married to addiction and to mental health issues. They're finding out even now that, you know, children that have a very stressful childhood, their brains develop differently. Their chemistry is different. And that's exactly what I have been struggling with my whole life, is having a chemical balance in the brain that ultimately puts you in a position where you do need help. You have to get support a lot of it. And I finally got to a place where, like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to get that support. So the thing that people really need to know is that our unhoused population out there has a lot of different constituencies. There's a lot of unhoused people that you will never see. These are the people that they don't suffer from addiction. They don't have any mental health disorder, but they're in a position where they just financially have no ability to pay for housing. Absolutely none. I've done some outreach work where I actually go out to the encampments and I talk to people. And that's one of the interesting things. If you allow yourself an opportunity to listen and hear the stories that people have gone through, what they have been through, the people that you meet on the street, what adventures they've had, but what stories that no one should have to go through. And that's exacerbated by their experience on the street, their time on the street. I know as part of my time on the street that I was sexually assaulted. I got beat up a couple of times. You know, and that was for the short time I was on the street. You know, I was living in my car for a greater part of a year. And finally, I had enough parking tickets that they finally took the car. And then I was out on the street. That lasted about, I don't know, because I had so many drugs. It could have been 4 months, it could have been 8 months, but it's somewhere in that time frame is the best I'm able to piece it together. And I was lucky I got arrested for shoplifting. And a judge gave me a voucher to go into a hotel room. There was another volunteer, their organization, I don't know who it was, they gave me a voucher also to go to a Goodwill and get free clothes. And they also sent me to a food bank where they gave me a bag of groceries that could be used in a kitchenette style kitchen, which is what I had. I had a microwave and a table, essentially, in the hotel room that they gave me. So it was perfect for me. But what we also have we also have veterans who are out there who don't have the financial resources, and they're not getting the support that they need to maintain their financial resources. You have senior citizens out there, and a lot of what you have out there too are, you know, we're seeing a lot of widows. Not widows, but yeah, widows that are out there. You know, the husband worked, he had a pension, Social Security, and then all of a sudden the husband dies, and wife, who was stay-home mom, who was living off of that pension's not coming in anymore. She doesn't qualify to get it, or the money goes away and his Social Security goes away. They can't afford the big house in Chatsworth anymore. And so she can't afford to pay the taxes. So now the house gets sold. And then she uses up that money to live on, and then there's not enough money to live the rest of her life on. So it's really, really tragic, the things that you see on the street. But the role of addiction tends to make, and mental health, is that it tends to make that segment of the population that's unhoused a little bit more visible, because there's less control about maybe their surroundings, about being out in the street, that sort of thing. So, you tend to see people when they're going through a terrible crisis, but when they're not in crisis, a lot of times most of the people I know, they try to stay out of public purview because of the ridicule and the shame that's heaped upon us. And when you add the trauma and self-esteem issues of being out on the street, you're out there, and then on top of everybody spitting on you, the ones that do spit on you, you feel like you deserve it. And that's a horrible place to be, because it becomes almost a cycle that you can't get out of. And it's so painful and so isolating. What do you have to do? The only way to cope with that is, okay, let me see what I can get to numb that pain. So it perpetuates the cycle of addiction for people like me. So I just want to make people really aware of that when you're able to finally deal with be able to develop the support system around you. Once you have housing, now you're in a place where you can start to develop the support system. When we provide rooms for 12-step meetings, I'll put the word out there to all our followers. Look, if you are part of a church group or any kind of a group that has a hall, and some 12-step group calls you and says, can we please rent the room for a couple of hours so we can have a meeting there? Please do it, because you are saving so many lives, giving people the opportunity. I know 12-step programs are not perfect. People have their pros and cons about them, but they saved my life, and they've saved everybody's lives that I know that really put in the effort to work the program and do it as you're instructed. So,
Right. And Renee, we see a lot of people out there that are part of organizations. And one of the things that really I get excited about is when I see participation, you know. So we have right now very serious issues affecting many communities. But when you see the participation of organizations, of churches, as you said, of individuals that are influencers, it's that's what community is all about.
yeah,
And what good does it? I always say this, Grace. What good does it do for me to have X amount of thousands of followers, of people that like my page or whatever, if I'm using it just for self, right? Or for stuff that does nothing for other people. Uh,
mhm,
it's okay to have your page, that where you put music or whatever, but use that to also, some good for the communities.
exactly. Well, and let me talk about it this way. How much is enough? When does enough become enough? You have the billionaire class that they have more money than they know what to do with, and yet you have so many people that claim that they care about their community. I mean, think back to Caruso. Caruso, he talked about how much in his commercials he loved the city. He spent $110 million. Where is he today? He's absolutely
Exactly.
he's vanished. We don't hear from him. It's like, oh, you care about the city only if we allowed you to be the mayor. I get it now. Okay, now we see you loud and clear. And there's too many people like that out there in terms of, where it comes with the money and stuff. But I want to say this with resources. What's really interesting to me is we have this dual philosophy going on in America right now. And I can't help but to be so observant of it. We talk about rugged individualism, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps and making things happen, and becoming self-made millionaires. Well, I'm going to tell you about something about a self-made millionaire. That self-made millionaire couldn't have acquired the billions and billions that they got unless you and me are buying their products. They need us to be billionaires. And to make the matters even worse, not only could they not be billionaires if we're not buying their products, but if we don't work for them, guess what's going to happen? They don't make their money. So one of the things that it seems that I've noticed is that, they want to tell us that, oh, we should pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and hard work, and you work at a job and you do X, Y, and Z, and you can make it too. And to some extent, there's a little bit of truth in that. They do allow us some modicum of success because they have to have the middle level managers of the rest of us, right? But God forbid we ever break into the billionaire class, or even the multi-millionaire class. And I also say that here's where the hypocrisy comes in. Because what happened to Semper Fi? No man left behind, no child left behind. And so we have this mentality of, okay, you have to do it on your own. But on the other hand, we're supposed to be a community. And like I said, it was kind of amazing during Hurricane Katrina in Texas. Nobody asked anybody their immigration status before receiving help from them. And there were all kinds of people that came together to help each other as a community. In fact, one of the most touching things you see is after a disaster, you don't see FEMA necessarily coming in and deliver and being the heroes. What you see is the community coming together. After 9/11, the community comes together. The outside help never seems to come, even though they have the resources, they don't come. But it's us helping each other. And one of these days, we're all going to wake up and say, you know what? When we finally realize that we want good, when I want good for you, Carlos, as much as I want it for my family, and I'm willing to work hard so you can have good, like I can have good, that's when we turn this thing around. Because think about it. I can say it both in terms of one side of the aisle or the other. It's of course we want to help people because we have compassion and feelings for people, and it's the Christian thing to do, and or it's the human thing to do, whatever you want to call it, that compels us to be magnanimous to other people who don't have enough as we do. But that can also become kind of perverted in the sense of we can become a bit of engage in saviorism, where we're looking down on someone and we're looking superior to feel superior, that we look down and bestow gifts upon people. We don't want to go that far in terms of trying to do that, engage in that kind of help. But the thing that we do want to look at is think about it from this point of view. And I've got the stats to prove it. I don't have them all at my fingertips right now, but I want you to think about how much we spend to keep someone in prison and what that cost, of what it took in terms of lawyers, trials, appeals, and then ultimately the housing, the medical care, the guards, the prison infrastructure. Because I don't know if your viewers know this, but the United States is the single most country in the world that incarcerates more of its citizens than anyone else in the world. And we continue to dialogue about how solutions to our problems is to get tougher on crime. We want to put more people in jail, more people in prison, more people locked down. Why are we doing that to ourselves? We have to think about that. And then we have to start thinking about, well, why are people getting into this kind of trouble? And if you look at most crime, it's an economic problem, right, Carlos?
Exactly.
So imagine this for a minute, So think about it from a business owner's perspective. I can spend, say, $6,000 a month to maintain a human being in jail. But do you know that for the cost of a tiny home, which isn't very expensive, you were able with Hope of the Valley and Ken Craft, for $5,000, you could sponsor one of the tiny homes. Now, that's not the ideal thing, and that we don't want that to be our permanent solution by any stretch of the imagination. But the initial $5,000 cost, what does it cost to feed that person? What does it cost to give them medical services? And what would be the cost? And this is where I'm going to be controversial, and some people are not going to like me when I say this, but what would be the medical costs if we legalized all drugs, allowed people to make the choice? You're going to say, oh, but people are going to die. They're going to euthanize themselves. It'll be worse. Well, we already know in England, when they legalized heroin, the usage, from when I studied this issue before, was that the usage went up temporarily. Yeah, a few people died, but ultimately it settled down because the industry that was created around the illegal nature of heroin was evaporated. It didn't become a money thing. It became something, if we had safe injection sites where people can just go and get their drugs and they can have their EBT card and go get their food. And if they're in the kind of person they're saying, you know what, they don't feel like doing anything. Well, you know what, I can maintain that person for like $2,000 a month. And they probably wouldn't bother anybody because they just stay home, use their drugs, and do what they do. But the one thing I know about human beings, Carlos, is that we all want something. We all have something we want to do. And we've either lost hope that it would ever be possible, and we give in and we flounder. And that's one of the things that happened to me for a short period of time when I was homeless. I had always dreamed of being a lawyer one day. And I knew that with all the terrible things that had happened to me through childhood and the things on the street, and now I'm homeless, it was never going to happen. And when I lost hope, my life continued to proceed downhill. The biggest blessing I ever got was getting arrested, because when I got arrested and I got housing, I never thought that would be possible again. And so when you're sitting there and you don't think those things can be possible, it's very hard to gain trust of people who've been living on the streets for a really, really long time. It's like I knew how to survive on the street, but putting me in housing again, thank God I wasn't too far removed from it. Had I stayed on the street longer, maybe my faith in being able to accomplish something would have been gone. But what I'm trying to get our viewers to understand is that it benefits everyone when you think of the cost savings in terms of insurance. Recently, I was listening to this restaurant that got broken into, and it's $10,000 of glass damage, breaking in, breaking the registers, breaking the cases, etc. And they got $300 in cash. So the insurance claims, the cost to business, the cost police costs, the security costs that we're spending to deal with a problem of not giving people enough resources to be able to do what they need to do. Now, I was very lucky because I did manage to find a job back in those days. Jobs that had health insurance benefits were pretty common. So I was able to get an entry level job with health insurance. We don't have that today. Today, having health insurance along with your benefits is something that doesn't happen. If you have the average paying job these days and it doesn't provide health insurance, trust me, you're not going to be able to afford the Affordable Care Act insurance because you'll be making too much money to afford your share of the premium. So it's not a perfect system. But what I want to say is that I came into it at a time and got a job where health insurance was available. I could get I could get therapy. I could go see a psychiatrist. I could start getting the support that I needed to dig myself out of a very shallow grave that I was already in, and able to begin my recovery process and keep trying and trying and trying because I had the housing, I had the work, and I had a little bit of money to feed myself and pay for my drugs. Now imagine if I didn't have to do all that, if I had the freedom to say, okay, you know what? If I don't feel like doing anything, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to go ahead and use my drugs, but I'm going to stay out of society's way. Well, nobody has to spend $6,000 a month keeping me locked up. They don't have to spend that kind of money. They could spend $2,000 a month on me in basic income, and I'm not wandering around and looking for, scavenging for resources, because that's a lot of what happens. And we've made that problem even worse in this city. I know I'm being long-winded, Carlos, but we've made the problem worse with this LA Municipal Code 4118 has made things worse, because what you're doing is you're taking a population of people, you're stripping away all of their resources, claiming to put them in storage in a place that's far away, that they have no car to go reclaim their stuff. So when they're finally released from wherever they're released from, they come back out to the community that they know, because that's all they know what to do, and they begin to scavenge for resources again. So it becomes more thefts, more car break-ins. That's why we're seeing this increase. I think, we're seeing a bit of an increase when it comes to break-ins and whatnot, because this is what we're generating with our poverty. More police is not going to solve this problem. More resources will solve the problem when we get people the basics. And that's one of the things that I've been preaching about for a really long time. There are 5 things in our lives that should never be profit centers: healthcare, education, sustenance, and housing, and in the environment, and for justice. Having justice and criminal justice should not be a profit motivated program, because then people stay in jail. Housing, same thing. You end up with a lot of people who can't afford housing, which is where we're at now. Healthcare. I mean, why are we doing that? Healthcare is a human right, but we don't do that. But imagine if we had, and this is the beauty of the place I visited with you, Carlos. This was so fascinating to go visit you and to see a facility where they had a store, and then they had a grocery area, and there was a gym, and there was a pharmacy, and there was a medical clinic. And then if I put on the imagination of housing, affordable housing in the area. Imagine if I was a person that lived in that community and I could walk into your center as a member of your community. And if I needed groceries, I would know I could get some. If I needed to go see the doctor, I could go see one. So instead of going to the emergency room and running up thousands and thousands of dollars in bill because I have a sinus infection, now I can walk into the clinic and they're going to give me antibiotics, and it's not going to turn into pneumonia. It's not going to turn into 2 weeks long in a hospital stay like it did one time for me, and ended up forcing me into bankruptcy because of medical debt. So, I mean, these are the things that we're not thinking through because we're so retaliatory. We're so much of the idea that everybody has to be independent and they got to pull themselves themselves up by their own bootstraps when they don't even realize they're not even pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, right?
Right.
Because they're getting money from an employer. They're getting their family supports them. You know, we have places to go, couches to sleep on. A lot of people have a lot of resources that they don't really know that they have. They've had a lot of support that they don't know they've had. And that's part of what we talk about, the conversation about people having privilege and whatnot. I know
So
I've
we
been
are having, right, we are having a conversation with Renee Grace Rodriguez, and lawyer, activist, and someone who was formerly unhoused. You are watching Stand Up Fight Back. We are here every Sunday. But today, actually, you asked the question, how much does it cost to incarcerate somebody, or to keep someone in prison? It costs here in California $106,000.
wow.
$106,000 a year to incarcerate somebody.
Yep.
Most of the money goes to security and to healthcare. Since 2010, 2011, yeah, the amount of the cost has increased by 117%. It's only
Wow.
going to go higher. And our jails, our prisons are filled with people, and some of them sleep even on the hallways or whatever. You hear different reports, but look, it's really bad. We're spending a lot of money in incarceration. What we need is not incarceration, but we need programs, as you said.
Exactly.
We need programs. We need ability to build communities where people have access to healthcare, where people have access to resources, where people, if they don't have a job, they have a place where they could go, get some training, get some perhaps some coaching in how to how to conduct, or not to conduct, but how to participate in a job interview. I mean, different things. We could get very creative, right?
There's all kinds of things that we can come up with, but that's the problem. It's the problem is so complex. It requires more than a Twitter attention span. There's so many people that have a Twitter attention span and they don't want to really look at the depth of the problem. The reality is that there has to be a bit of a cafeteria plan, because not every person out there needs the same thing. That's why Lindsay Horvath was such a dynamic persona to be county supervisor in my area. One of the approaches that she took was that she took a very intellectual, curious approach. Now, this is a white woman who I don't know that she's ever experienced homeless or anything like that. But what she did is she went out in the street to find out what is going on. What do people need? And they went one by one. Now, people will complain, oh, but West Hollywood doesn't have a lot of homeless people. But it doesn't matter. Going to each person one by one to find out what they need. But it's
For
not just
themselves,
for
going out
themselves,
there for themselves. Don't
right?
depend on what someone is telling you.
Yes, exactly. But it's not only that, but it's finding out what the need is and being able to understand what that person is able to accept. Because remember, you're dealing with a lot of people who are dealing with shame. They have a lot of issues that, that they want to live up to that, pull yourself up by the bootstrap mentality. And so they don't want any help from anybody. They just want to be left alone. And they don't realize, because of that indoctrination of pull yourself up by the bootstraps, that they don't have to. If we can supply people a basic foundation, they can evolve and have fulfilling lives, just giving people a very healthy start. And so I know we're going to get people out there, probably not from people in our progressive movement that would be thinking this way, but other people who may watch this video to understand. But the big they out there don't want help. But that's not the case. They don't want the kind of help that is sometimes being dished out there. Think about it. If I'm addicted to drugs and I'm an alcoholic and I can't just stop drinking, you say, okay, I have a room for you over here and I got a job for you. How do you think I'm going to function? I can't stop drinking all of a sudden because I need to be detoxed. How am I going to get to that job? How am I going to get clean clothes? How am I going to get transportation? How am I going to go from being my basic survival mode of foraging day to day to get resources like food and be able to get a shower and being able to use a bathroom and be able to find safe places to sleep, going from that mentality to the 9 to 5 drive, or even, any kind of a job where there's a place where I have to leave and come back and do this. And people also they say, well, why don't they get a job? And it's like, well, think about it. If you live in an encampment and it's dangerous, what happens if you leave your stuff for 8 hours to go get a job? You're going to come back and your home is gone. Your stuff is gone. So people don't understand that it's not as easy as you think. And that's why that individualized approach that Ms. Horvath engaged in West Hollywood, even though it was like, it wasn't a tremendous number of people, but it was effective in getting people off the street consistently. And that's one of the things that we need to do more of. One of the things I question, we have the mission in downtown Los Angeles, but they have a zero tolerance drug and alcohol policy. So the reason why you see so many people out on the street is these are the people that won't be accepted back into the mission because they drink and use. And there are no beds for alcoholics and addicts. I can tell you right now, having worked in the addiction community, is like, if I can have someone that hits bottom and says, okay, I'm ready to go, I'm willing to get into detox and get help, and you call Tarzana and it's a 2-week wait, we'll have a bed in 2 weeks. Well, in 2 weeks, that person's either dead or you can't find them anymore because they're not at the same encampment they were before. So what I'm trying to get across to our viewers is the problem is extremely complex, but no matter how complex it is, the cost of finding real solutions is a lot less than what it's costing us in terms of our finances, in terms of incarceration and criminalization of poverty. We have to stop doing that. And yes, that means there are going to be some people who are just plain lazy, don't want to work. They just want to live off the government for free. There's going to be people like that. There's no doubt about that. But you know what? The cost of catering to them, when you think about who you are, ask yourself, if someone gave you a little house to live in and some food and a little bit, and you could maybe go to school online and do some things like that, would you do nothing with your life? I don't know many people like that, Carlos, that would literally say, yeah, I'm going to retire and do nothing and just live off the government. There are not many people that are willing to do that. So people do what they have to do to survive. And once survival is assured, then they build up tools and skills to thrive. And if we constantly keep people chasing for their basic survival, there's never an opportunity for them to thrive, to evolve, and to live a more fulfilling life. We're hurting ourselves because we're putting ourselves and subjecting ourselves to all these people who are struggling to survive. Well, you know what? It's spiritually damaging from a spiritual sense and an emotional sense to an entire community to have so many people struggling like this. I mean, I don't know when you grew up, Carlos, but when I was growing up, everywhere I lived, there was always one or two, people that were homeless, right? And oh yeah, they don't harm nobody. They just wander around, do their thing. But it's not like that anymore. It's not a 1 or 2 problem anymore. It's like the unhoused community is growing. And even though we have 4 or 5 a night dying, the population continues to grow.
Right.
This kind of human tragedy, people wonder, well, how could the Holocaust happen? Or how could all these tragedies happen in the world? How do people stand by and allow this to happen? We're doing it right now because we think we're listening to the narratives out there that are trying to sell insurance and property and investments on talk radio. We're listening to the news and they're trying to sell a product that they want to get us hyped up on hate. They want us to hate somebody and be angry so we can overcome our own depression, take action, and be busy, go buy their product or go visit their stores or get involved with their church or get involved with their government, whatever it is they want them to do. And it's crazy making. We need to start caring about this ourselves on a one-to-one basis. And that'll bring us into what you and I wanted to talk about as I dominate this conversation. I'm so sorry. I just do.
Okay.
Chatty
Okay.
Cat.
I want you to talk because, look, here's the thing. You have a lot to say. And I think that it's important for people to hear this because you coming from the point of experience.
Yeah.
And this is what makes the difference because there's a lot of people out there, some of the audience out there, and you know how much I love you guys, but There's a lot of people out there that you may feel that you're not good enough to be able to help somebody else because you have your own personal problems. But look, we all come. I was homeless at one point. I run away from home. I'm not this perfect man that you see here. You know what I mean? It's like I have my history. I struggle just like everybody else. I made a lot of mistakes. But guess what? It's like, I realized that those experiences that I went through in life, as painful as they may be, now I can help somebody else because there's a lot of more Carloses out there,
Yes, absolutely.
right?
That anything you go through, there's always going to be someone that you're going to be able to share that experience, strength, and hope with to help them overcome. Everything that's happened to you will be made used. It will be used for a good purpose. So, the thing that I really want to get people to understand is that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. If I never ask for help, none will ever come. But when I ask for help, I may not get all the help I want, but I certainly get the help that I need. And that goes for every single one of us. So if you think that your vote doesn't matter, it doesn't add up to much, your vote does matter. In so many races right here in Southern California, races were run literally by a couple of hundred votes. Those votes made a difference. But this is what it brings me back to what I was about to say before we went on that tangent for a second, was to talk about grassroots organizing.
Hmm.
So when we get involved in our community, we meet people and, we all get a gut feeling about people, don't we? It's like you kind of, your instincts are kind of like, I don't know about that person, or, you know what? Wow, I really like this person. I don't know why I like them, but I really like them. They seem really sincere, and you can go about and meet people. But if you don't get involved with politics, you don't get involved with going to community meetings of any kind, you don't get involved, you never get that one-on-one personal time with any of these electeds. They're just names you hear about in the news, and the news hypes them up either up or down, that they're good or they're bad. And you never get a real sense of who they are. And so the disconnect to what goes on and who governs us is real because we don't get that actual connection. But and I was one of those people up until 2015. It's like, what do I care? I go and vote. I get my little party slate card. Okay, this is who they want me to vote for. Fine. And not even think about it and not really thinking about the harm that created, because it does create a lot of harm just to do that. So I started to get involved. I wanted to make a difference. And when I started getting involved, I started meeting people. And I get starstruck. It's like, wait a minute. That's Bernie Sanders. He's right there. Oh my God, that's him. And being able to take a picture with him. Oh my God, thrilled out of my mind to take a picture with him. So being able to meet these people you hear about, standing next to Nancy Pelosi and talking to her about getting her picture done in front of a screen, and how she walks so well in her heels. My God, somebody that old and they're walking that great in their heels. My God, I can't even walk in heels like that. But you meet these people and you start to see who they are and you get a sense of their energy and what they're really about. Nothing like what you see on the news, nothing what you see described in the news. And I got to tell you, there are a lot of good people out there, and you just don't know how good they really are, even on both sides of the aisle. But what you see on TV is just such a distortion. What you read in the news is such a distortion. So I really highly recommend that everybody gets involved on a very personal, local level. Get out of your house, make the time. And not only that, once you're able to make that time to get out of the house and start to educate yourself and introduce yourself to people and you get to meet other people, make sure you bring your family and friends with you. Bring someone with you to the next meeting you go to and show them. So that's one of the things that I'm doing quite a bit of. In fact, I'm working on a program right now that's going to happen in Assembly District 40. It's called the Ambassador Program. Now, people don't know this, how the delegates are chosen for the California Democratic Party, but there's a process where some delegates are elected by members of the community. So if you're a Democrat, you can be invited to vote in what's called the ADEM elections. I am an ADEM delegate. I was elected by my community to be one of 14 in our area. And what we're starting with the organizing committee in the California Democratic Party is, for the first time, I'm going to call you and I'm not going to ask you for any money. I'm not going to ask you to vote for anybody. I'm not going to ask you to endorse anyone. I'm going to invite you to a picnic. And this is to celebrate working families. So I'm in the process of working with our labor unions to putting on the best picnic with all the red, white, and blue, with the fireworks, getting the flag back up and reclaiming our flag as belonging to all of us once again. We cannot let that go. And this is how we reclaim both our government, we reclaim the elected officials. This is part of strategizing for the progressive movement, is you have to begin to believe in the power of one-on-one conversations like the one I'm having with you online right here. Because if I can get you to come and sit down with me and you go in a room and you listen to some of our elected officials, you're going to sit there and say, and they're popular. And you say, why would anyone ever vote for that person? And then you'll meet, and then there's some I'll take you to go meet, and you'll see, oh, that they're kind of people ridicule. I mean, let me give you a classic example. We talk about Marianne Williamson, who's running for president. And she's very much a spiritual type person. She's holistic. And so people kind of make fun of her presidency. But the reality is, when you sit down and you talk to her about policy, she's solid. She's common sense. She makes sense. She's very practical. And she's very much about not generating policy from a place of hatred and retribution like we do criminalizing poverty. It's very much about, she recognizes that when you empower people, most of them will rise to a level of fulfillment and they will become self-sufficient. And they will contribute to society in a very positive way. When people are given the opportunity, they will. And that's where we got to switch our fundamental belief, is instead of believing that most people are bad and they're not going to do good when you give them resources, start to understand that when a complete package of resources is provided and there's nothing else they have to chase after, then it's an opportunity for them to look within and develop and evolve.
There you go. I think you hit something, and we went out for a second. But you're absolutely correct, Renee. We are out of time, unfortunately. We've been here an hour exactly. But
Wow.
I tell you, we have fun here because we have these conversations that that are real, because this is real people with real issues, real struggles. I am sure that you still have personal struggles that you go through every day.
Yep.
But we are looking forward to the upcoming California State Democratic Convention that is going to be held here at the end of May, actually right here in downtown Los Angeles. And we are trying to put together a Bernie Kratz party, Democratic party convention party. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be announcing the location and how you can participate, and we're going to have guest speakers. We're going to have some of the political people come in and share some of their thoughts, music. The last time that I helped organize one of them was in Long Beach. We had a blast.
Oh, yeah.
We had absolutely a blast. But these things come around from time to time, and it's an opportunity for us to come together. And this is what it's all about. We have to be able to come together. We have to be able to put our political differences to the side. And think about this, and Renee, you correct me if I'm wrong. Housing should be non-political.
Correct.
Health should be non-political. Education should be non-political. The environment should be non-political. And by that, I mean, we have politicized these issues. And this is why nothing gets done.
Yep.
Everyone, regardless of their political status, deserves housing. Deserves access to affordable housing.
Yep.
Everyone, regardless of the political background, deserves to have access to healthcare. Everyone, regardless of the political background, deserves to have access to education, to higher education, free of cost. It used to be free.
And not only that, not just access that, but also access to capital. Because not everybody's an entrepreneur, but those who are need that opportunity. Yeah, they're going to have a few failures because business is not always successful, but we do need to allow people to engage in business and try things out to become successful.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. There has been little focus on small businesses, on those people that want to do startups. This is why public banking, and I don't want to take more time because we already spent enough time, but this is why public banking is so important, because we're going to be able to provide access to capital for those people that want to be able to start, their new business.
100%.
And even if you have failed in the past, we should be able to always have a fresh start. People
Yes.
deserve fresh start. And I'm gonna close with this. I know that you come from a very, I'm gonna say, conservative background, perhaps.
Yes.
We had a little bit those discussions. I do. I'm a man of faith. I come from, a background of church and Bible and all that stuff. But what would you say to people out there right now, as we close this broadcast, that are conservative and that always tend to, think that, as you say, people need to get up by their own, accord, and what do you say to people like this?
Well, one of the things is one of the roles I serve is I'm the vice president of the Chatsworth Port Ranch Chamber of Commerce. So I work with a lot of business owners who have pulled themselves up by the bootstrap. But the conversation I have with them quite often is, it's not your bootstraps. You were given a set of bootstraps to use. Thank goodness you could speak English clearly, that maybe you don't have an accent. You had access to a public school education that gave you a foundation to at least be able to read and write and do work with numbers. And on top of that, if you're in this society, maybe you had fairer skin than others and you didn't experience the daily horrific discrimination that occurs to people whose skin is darker than yours and mine. And at the end of the day, you really have to look at, nobody does this alone. Nobody does this in isolation. We need a community. We need each other. And as soon as you recognize that, you realize that everyone is part of our community, even our unhoused community, our addicts, our mentally ill people, they are all our neighbors. They are our community. And when you want good for them as much as you want it for yourself, we all benefit, because we know benefiting the least of us benefits all of us.
All right, there you go. We have with us again, Renee Grace Rodriguez. Thank you so much for being with me today and for accepting this invitation. I know I took time from your family time, but we are so happy that you were able to be here. I've been wanting to invite you to be part of us. And I'm going to be seeing you out there in the streets. I'm going to be seeing you out there in those courthouses.
That's right.
Wherever we are, we have a date to go see that housing project over in El Monte.
Yes.
I'm very interested in coming out there and see that. But it's been an absolutely precious time with you, and a pleasure to have you here with us today. You have watched Stand Up, Fight Back.
Stand Up, Fight Back
for the progressive movement. We'll be back next Sunday. Thank you for watching, everyone. Stay safe.